Welcome to our museum. Today we're going to learn about Egyptian gods. Right here we have the Ennead, which is a group of Egyptian gods from the Old Kingdom of Egypt. Egypt used to be split into three different kingdoms, the Old, the Middle, and the New, which were all in different time periods. The Ennead are a group of 9 Egyptian gods who are all one family. They're from one of the most popular creation myths in Egypt. Adam was said to be the first god and the creator of the world for the rest of the Ennead and all of his descendants. Over here, we get to learn more about Adam. He was um, the father of all of the rest of the Ennead, and one Egyptian myth suggests that he created the world. He's often seen wearing a double crown of upper and lower Egypt, which ironically are reversed. Lower Egypt was further up north, and Upper Egypt was further down south. Ancient Egypt believed that he traveled across the sky during the day and passed through the underworld at night. He would be reborn at dawn. Sometimes he would be shown as an old man since he represented the end of life. Adam had 2 children, Shu and Tefnut. Shu, right here, is seen as the god of air and atmosphere. He always has his arms up like this because he is holding up the sky and holding his children apart. His children are Nut and Geb. He is sometimes connected to Ra as he journeyed across the sky each day. Some credit him with being the creator of the first humans, which makes him not only the god of the sky, but of life and creation as well. Here we have Tefnut, and she actually has the head of a lioness, which we see reoccurring in a lot of Egyptian mythology, is that they all tend to have some connection with an animal. This is the goddess of all moisture in the environment. She is often depicted as a lioness or a woman with the head of a lion, as we see here. She helps crops grow, and she helps Ra on his journey. She's married to Shu and is the mother of Geb and Nut. Shu is also her brother. Here we see Geb. He's always seen laying down to represent the land. He is the god of earth and fertility. Geb is also married to Nut, the goddess of the sky. He is the god that fathered many other gods and goddesses, including Osiris and Isis. These ancient Egyptians believe that he helps bring about a good harvest. Geb is also associated with the idea of stability and balance. He was believed to help keep the earth firmly in place and prevent chaos and disorder. Here we see Nut. She is stretched over the earth and arching her body. Nut is a goddess that represented the sky, just like her grandfather. She is usually shown as a woman with a starry body arching over the earth. According to Egyptians, she swallowed the sun every single night and gave birth to it every morning. They believe she protected the souls of the dead, and that the souls would travel their way through her body to the afterlife, just like the sun did every night. Nut and Geb had 4 children. We'll learn more about them over here. There was Nephthys, who is almost identical to her sister Isis over here. She is the goddess of mourning, funerals, and the dead, and she is portrayed wearing a headdress that formed 2 hieroglyphs to spell her name, a bowl and a house. She's the wife of Set and the sister of Isis and Osiris. She would watch over the mummified bodies of the deceased with her sister on their journey to the afterlife. She was a well-known protective goddess of ancient Egypt, despite no one knowing who she is today. Osiris was known as the god of the afterlife and fertility, specifically new life, and he married Isis. He was murdered by his brother Seth and brought back to life by his wife. He is usually shown as a mummified man with green or black skin. He holds a crook and a foil, and ancient Egyptians believed that he judged the souls of the dead and decided whether they were worthy of entering the afterlife. He was linked with the annual flooding of the Nile River. This brought new life, just like he was brought back to life. Over here, we see Set, and he is seen as the villain of ancient mythology for Egypt. He murdered his brother out of jealousy. But he's not all bad. He protects the god Ra on his journey every single day and every single night. He protects him from dangerous creatures that Apophis would want to send after him. Set is the god of chaos, the desert, the storms, violence, and foreign people. He's often shown as the head of an animal that resembles multiple creatures, including a jackal, a donkey, and an aardvark. And despite people having mixed views of him because he killed his brother, he's also used to help grow crops and cause a good harvest. And finally, the last goddess of the Aeneid, we have Isis. She's the goddess of protection, motherhood, and magic. She's usually depicted as a woman with a hieroglyph for a throne, worn as a crown, with Hathor's crown, which is right here. You can see the hieroglyph in her name here. She is also the mother of Horus. Ancient Egyptians believed that she could perform magic and heal the sick. In some stories, it was said that the annual Nile floods were caused by the tears of Isis, who cried for her dead husband, Osiris. Here we have the god Ra, and Ra was very important in ancient Egypt. He is the god of the sun and associated with light, warmth, and growth. He's frequently depicted with the head of a falcon and the body of a human. He is often considered to be the first king ruling over the humans and gods. Ra is believed to have the power to control the sky and the weather, as well as life and death. His worshippers and main temple are located in a town called Heliopolis, which means the city of the sun in Greek. Over here we have Nun. He is a creature god who he formed humans on a potter's wheel, and he used the clay from the Nile River. He's often depicted as a man with the head of a ram or a sheep, which is why he has horns growing out of his head. Nun is the guardian of the source of the Nile River, which is why the Egyptians believed that he would be the one to create them on a potter's wheel. He is often worshipped by people who would give him offerings and ask for good health or a successful harvest. Over here, we see Sobek. He is the god of the Nile River, often associated with fertility, protection, and strength. He has the head of a crocodile and the body of a human, and sometimes they showed him completely as a crocodile. Even though he's shown as a crocodile, he protects people from dangers such as crocodile attacks or evil spirits. He's often worshipped in temples located near the Nile, and the temples were sometimes kept by sacred crocodiles in large pools. Some ancient legends say that he could control the flow of the river and make it flood or recede as needed. Hapi is thought to control the Nile. As you can see, he is blue, just like the waters of the river. He would control the flood in its banks and allow crops to grow. He's often portrayed as a man with a large belly, representing fertility and good food. They show this to mean that he eats really well, and you would too if you worshipped him. He sometimes has lotus flowers or papyrus plants growing from his head, and Hapi is occasionally shown as a pair of figures trying to combine two plants representing the two halves of Egypt. This was a symbol of unity. He is worshipped throughout the entirety of Egypt, and his influence could be felt in every aspect of life that depended on the Nile. Over here, we have Horus, who is arguably one of the more important gods. Horus is the god of the sky, war, and hunting. Pharaohs were said to be descendants or even figureheads of Horus on earth. He's often represented as the god of kingship and was often depicted as the pharaoh's defender. Often he was portrayed as a man with the head of a falcon, and sometimes he was just a falcon. Sometimes Horus would actually combine with Ra, creating Horus Ra, which we will learn more about later. He is the son of Osiris and Isis and defeated his uncle Seth to claim the throne of Egypt. He is worshipped through all of Egypt, and his image can be found in many temples and tombs. It is said that he is a just and fair God who protected the people of Egypt and maintained order and balance. And finally, we have Ammit, who was actually not a god, but more like a boogeyman to the Egyptians. She is a creature depicted as having a head of a crocodile, the forelegs of a lion, and the hind legs of a hippopotamus. Her name means the devourer because she ate the hearts of the dead if they were unworthy. She lived next to the scales of justice in the underworld, which was also called the Duat. Her heart would be, their hearts would be weighed against the feather of truth. And it was not just good enough for them to be honest, but rather good people who lived just and fair lives on earth. If they were not good enough and when they were weighed against the feather of truth, she would eat their hearts whole right in front of the other gods. Osiris and Anubis were mainly there. This is mostly because she is, in fact, just a way to judge people. And because of this, she is mostly an Egyptian funeral art. She exists as a warning to be morally upright and good for your whole life. Here we're going to learn more about the ancient gods of Egypt, and not only creative gods, but some other ones as well. Here we see an illustration from the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, and this one here shows the Ennead right before Amon-Ra. This drawing is a little hard to decipher just because of the faded pieces, but over on the left you can see the gods and goddesses we learned about before. Down on the bottom, you see gods like Horus and Ra, and at the top you can see some goddesses like Isis or Nephthys. As we said before, the Ennead are one big family, and because of this, we can see them doing even more things like their duties. At the bottom, you can spot a man with his hands held up, reaching towards another person. Does anyone know who the one who stretched over everyone is? Do you remember? Do you remember who this lady is right here? Okay, this is the goddess Nut. And she was the one who represented the sky. And so here, as you see this man, his hands held straight up. Do you remember who that is?
No.
It's okay. It took me a while to learn as well. That is Geb, and he is separating Nut and her brother, who was also her husband, who is down here at the bottom. Do you see him?
Mm-hmm.
Right here?
Yeah, I see him.
Yes, and so he would separate those two. But before they were separated, they had lots and lots of children. Over here you can see a little statue, an amulet of their father. This here, on the left, we see the sun god Ra with the falcon head, and as you can see the sun or the sundial right above his head. And he made his journey every single day, but his enemy, Apophis, made that journey really treacherous, which is another word for dangerous. And here you can see Apophis. He was a snake. You see? Literally a snake. As you can see, he made the journey that Ra had to make sure our world kept going every single day. Super, super dangerous. Over here, we learn more about the Middle Kingdom, which is something we haven't covered before. On the left, you see a map of Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. And you remember before I said that Lower Egypt was actually in the north, while Upper Egypt was in the south? Here you can see that.
That's actually kind of confusing.
It is very confusing, yes. Right here, we see gods and goddesses that were a completely different group of creation gods. And those were called the Agdoad. The reason that they were completely different and they had completely different creation myths is because this was like about 1,000 years away from the other one. Ancient Egypt has such a vast empire that the Old Kingdom actually lived way longer than Christianity is to this day. So, they had new myths. This is the Middle Kingdom myth that was based in Hermopothosen, or Kenmu, as the Egyptians called it. And over here on the map, you can see it. It's a little hard to see it, but it's up there. Those were in the middle. Up here we can see Nun and Nanet, which represented water, He and Hawhet, which expressed the notion of infinity, Kek and Kauket, which stood for darkness, and Amun and Amwat, which represented the concept of hiddenness. These 8 gods existed within the watery chaos of pre-creation, which means they existed before anything did.
What does the word notion, I think?
Notion means something that is, how do you say, the way you would say something or how you feel about something. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the idea of infinity, basically, in this sense. They believe that the Ogdoad actually made not only the earth, but also a cosmic egg that the first deity that made the rest of the world had been formed from, including the primeval mound. And the primeval mound was the first land to arise out of the waters of pre-creation. Here we see Thoth. And Thoth was also known as the god that came from all of the other gods of the Ogdoad. They say that he was the one that is the cause of the cosmic egg. In the middle, you see his bird, which is an ibis. Do you know what an ibis is?
Pretty sure.
Yeah? I think you've seen some before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So some people believe that an ibis or an ibis laid an egg, and others believe it was a goose. Yes, and they believe that egg is what made the cosmic egg that created the whole world. Some people think that the goose that laid it was named the Great Cackler, which is a really silly name. Some people believe that a boy was born, and a boy was a god, actually. And they believe he emerged from a lotus flower, which is what we see here. This boy is actually King Tut, which is the famous boy king of Egypt. And some believe that right after that god emerged, a scarab did. Here we learn more about the gods of the New Kingdom. These guys were called the Memphite theology, and they were founded in Memphis. They were created around 3200 BCE, which is kind of like saying 3,200 years before Christ was even born. Yes, this is very old. And these guys were known as Ptah, Sekhmet, and Nefertiti. Ptah was created as a craftsman and a creator, and Sekhmet was his wife. She was the goddess of death, war, violence, plague, and medicine. And Nefertiti was the child of them, who was known as first sunlight and the smell of a blue lotus flower. Here we see the Shabaka tablet, which was created by a Nubian king named Shabaka. He had seen a papyrus that was basically completely eaten by worms, and he knew that they absolutely had to save it. So he had people inscribe it, and that is what we see here. Okay, we can go. Here we see Aten, who is actually another god who is seen as a creation god. And we also see Men, who we see all the way on the left, who was from the pre-dynastic period, which means he was actually before God or before kings and pharaohs existed in Egypt. He is connected with fertility and creation, and he holds a flail in his hand and a crown that is super, super tall. And then over here we have Amun, who is the hidden one, who is also one of the gods from the Agduat. And he got super, super popular during the Middle Kingdom, and once the New Kingdom had arisen, he became super prominent, and they all loved and worshipped him. He is also known as the King of the Gods, just because of that. Here, the smaller image is his wife, Mut, and they have a child named Khonsu. And these guys made the Theban triad. Here is an image of Khonsu himself. And we will learn a little more about Khonsu later.
And
Yes?
and also there's a sundial above her head, but it's white.
Yeah, it's true. Here we have Nu, who is known as the creator of humans, animals, and gods with the potter's wheel. And we can see that over here on the left. It's very, very faint, but he was seen in creating Hatshepsut. Here in the middle is a tablet, or I'm sorry, not a tablet, a sculpture of him. And here is an image of him. We learned a bit more about him in the other room.
What is he doing?
He's creating different humans and gods using clay from the Nile River. Mm-hmm. Here is Aten. Aten is kind of like Ra in a sense, because he was seen as a creator god and a solar deity, which means a deity of the sun or a god of the sun. And there was a king named Akhenaten. Akhenaten was bold, to say the least, right? He knew that everybody believed in many gods, but Akhenaten wanted to worship one god, and that god was Aten. Akhenaten kind of alienated himself with his own priests because he believed that everyone should be the worshippers of Aten. And alienate means to separate or to be alone, because nobody else wanted to do this with him. In fact, nobody wanted to do it with him so badly that the moment he died, his son, King Tut, from before with the lotus flower, King Tut changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun. Okay. Here we're going to get into a bunch of miscellaneous gods so you can learn more about the gods of Egypt that were not creation gods.
What does miscellaneous mean?
Random and don't fit into one category. On the left, you see Taweret, who is the goddess of childbirth and fertility and protection. She's often seen being or known for being a mother or in a family. She's portrayed as a standing hippo with a body and boobs of a pregnant woman. Yes, I know. That is what you see there. She's closely linked with the protection of children, and she's often shown on furniture and household objects to ward off danger and ensure health and well-being of children.
Question.
Yes.
So when the children die, it's her fault?
No, because death was actually welcomed in ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
They all believed that it was kind of like a natural step in life. No one really feared death in ancient Egypt. She has a lot of amulets from her because everyone believed that she was one that would protect their children. She actually became super popular outside of Egypt as well, serving in different areas in the Eastern Mediterranean and parts of Western Asia. And on the left, we have Seshat. She was the goddess of all types of writing and accounting and math and building planning, and her name literally means the female scribe. She often is depicted as a woman wearing a headdress shaped like a 7-pointed star, which is up here. And sometimes she's described as Thoth's sister, wife, or daughter. She had no temple of her own, but she played a part in rituals for laying out the foundations of all buildings.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You said left twice.
I'm sorry. I said left twice.
Mm-hmm.
When?
Last page, I think.
Could you go back? What were you
Yeah.
confused about?
I was confused because you said left twice.
About what? Could you say the sentence? Okay. This here on the left is Serket. Oh, that's what it was. I'm sorry. So before it was the left was Taweret and the right was Sishat. Okay? They were two difference. So here on the left is Serket. And she was the goddess of scorpions, venom, and healing. She is depicted as a woman with a scorpion on her head and holding a scorpion. In this one, she's not actually holding a scorpion, but sometimes they would show her like that. She is seen as the protective goddess against scorpion stings and other poisonous bites, as well as rebirth. So,
Is that raw?
No, that is not Ra. But I do think it's really good that you recognize that the sun is seen for Ra. We will get into them soon. So, this one over here, she was worshipped because people believed that she would keep them safe from poisonous bites. Because of this, her connection was with healing, and the priests were considered great magicians or doctors. She's worshipped by people who would give her offerings of food and drink and scorpion amulets in exchange for her healing abilities. Here is Sekhmet. No. Go back. Go back. You're going forward.
My fault.
So this one, next slide. Yes, this right here is Sekhmet. And Sekhmet is a goddess of war, destruction, power, and strength. And her image was used to show courage and resilience. She was also the goddess of pestilence and plague because she was thought to have the power to protect against disease and evil. If you notice, when a god is associated with something, it typically means they're going to keep you safe or they're going to do good for you. This is because the Egyptians had really good images of their gods, despite the fact that their river would flood. And that's because their river would flow regularly, and they could easily just plant things, and it would be able to irrigate it.
Mm-hmm.
Irrigate means when you take water from like a river or something, and you manipulate the earth, you change up the earth so that you can plant things easier. Okay?
Mm-hmm. What are they holding, like, on the right hand?
They're holding staffs most of the time.
Why are they holding staffs?
Because they're gods. It shows power, and it shows that they are above others. So, Sekhmet, she's depicted as having the lioness head and the body of a woman. And she's a warrior of the god Ra. You remember how earlier you asked if it was Ra? Well, that's because she's a warrior for Ra, and that is why she has the sun right above her. Are you alright? When she was tame and calm, she changed her name into Bastet or Hathor. And Bastet is often known to people as Bast. We'll get more into her later. Over here is Ra Orakti, or the combination of Ra and Horus. And this person, or this god, is depicted as having a head of a hawk or a falcon. Here it is a falcon. And wearing the sun disk over their head, just like Ra is. There's a really, really long poem dedicated to them in the Book of the Dead. Let's see. Oh, and if you look closely, you can actually see that at the bottom they have a bull's tail, which is another symbol of power. Here is Ptah, the god of craftsmen, architecture, and artists. They are depicted as a mummified man wearing a skull cap and holding a scepter. So in this case, instead of it being like a just normal staff like everybody else, it's a scepter. You see how it's all decorated? Yes?
They have power or strength too.
Yes, they do.
Like what does Ra like what type of power have Ra had?
Ra is the god who protects people, and he is the god of life and creation, but also of death. He helps carry the sun through the sky every single day. And every single night he brings it back up to the sky. Ptah, which was right here, he is connected with healing and believed to have the power to cure an illness and injuries. He's the main god of Memphis and one of Egypt's earlier gods. Here is Nun on the left. He's not part of the Ennead, but he existed before the world and the gods that came into being. He was a very, very ancient god, even older than gods like Isis. The ancient Egyptians believed that before anything else, there was only Nun, a vast and infinite ocean of water, which is why he is blue. All life was believed to have emerged from Nun's waters. He is considered a protective god who can help people across their journeys on the ocean. There's actually a Greek equivalent to Nun. Does anyone know who he is?
Poseidon.
No, before then.
Kronos.
No, I'm thinking before the Titans, like Gaia.
I don't remember his name.
It's okay. There is one though. They're older than Titans, and the Egyptians have a concept of that as well.
Wasn't he just like a ball of gas or something?
Yes, something like that. Here is Neith, and Neith was the goddess of hunting, weaving, and war. She's often linked with creation and rebirth as well. The Egyptians really valued creation and rebirth. She's often shown having a red crown of Lower Egypt, or a headdress made of 2 bows and a shield, which is right here. She sometimes carries a bow and an arrow, and she's said to create weapons for warriors. They believed that this was the power to create or to protect against danger and to help women during childbirth. On the left, we see Montu, who is a god of war, and as you see, he also has a falcon head. This is because the falcon was also associated with war a lot. He was worshipped by soldiers who believed that he would help them win their battles. And his name means nomad or traveler. He was associated with strength and vitality, and some legends say that he had the power to heal injuries. He was often worshipped by people who would give him offerings for victory or battle and good health. And here is Maat. She was the goddess of truth, justice, and balance. And she's also considered a goddess of harmony. She's shown with ostrich feathers and her head, and she holds wings on her hands. So up here it's supposed to be an ostrich feather. She represents the force that kept the universe in balance and was called on during the important events like crowning a pharaoh or signing a peace treaty. She protects against chaos and evil, and she is shown to be moral or ethical behavior, which means good. And when ancient Egyptians died, they would be judged in the underworld, and their heart would be weighed against her feather. You remember earlier I told you about how Amit would be sitting there waiting for you to be weighed against a feather? It was her feather. Oh my God. So, and then we're going to make... Do you remember earlier when I told you guys about Khonsu? And I said we're going to learn more about him? Well, Khonsu was the god of the moon, and he was again the son of Amun and Mut. He was depicted as a young man who was tightly wrapped in a fitted garment, or a man with the head of a falcon. Yes?
Never mind.
Okay. He had both forms of a crown or the shape of the moon disk. His name meant traveler or pathfinder, and that's because the moon travels across the sky at night, and he protected those who traveled at night. He's often linked with healing and believed to have the power to cure illnesses and injuries. He's also thought to have the power to control time, and often called on during ceremonies that mark the beginning and end of a period of time, like a new king. So, she was for crowning a king, and he was for the end of a king's reign. Okay, so you see the guy with the big old beetle on his face? That's Khepri. He's shown having a scarab on his head, and he's the god of the rising sun. Scarab beetles were often shown rolling a ball of poop just as the sun moved across the sky.
It's probably a dung beetle.
Yeah, it actually is a dung beetle.
Quick question.
Yes?
How did he see?
I genuinely have no earthly clue. Yes?
It was gross. Like, why did he have a beetle on his head?
Well, that's because he was linked with transformation and rebirth, and since young scarab beetles hatch from the inside of a ball of dung or poop, he is seen for rebirth, and that is why he has a dung beetle or a scarab on his face. He's a symbol of hope and resurrection, and often mentioned during funeral ceremonies. And over here we have Hathor. She's the goddess of love and joy, music and beauty. She's linked with women, motherhood, and new life. She's often shown in 3 different ways: with the head of a cow and the body of a woman, as a woman with a headdress of cow horns and a sun disk, as we see here, or as a cow with a headdress of a corn and of cow horns and a sun disk.
I have a question. Do you think that she is related, well, not related, but she is based off of... No, do you think Persephone is based off of her?
I don't think Persephone would be the one that's based off of her. I think Nephthys would have been the one that Persephone is most similar to. Because Nephthys was the goddess of death, and that is essentially what Persephone was as well.
Yeah.
How does the sun disk fit inside of the moon?
I genuinely think that it's just that the sun disk is fit to be in it. They made the sun disk resize for the horns. But you have to remember that this is all artistic interpretation. So it's just how the artist thinks it would make sense.
Who made these? Who drew these?
The ancient Egyptians drew the original ones, but these images actually come from the British Museum. But the original images, which you can look up more when you get home, are really, really, really old. I'd say tens of thousands of years old now, maybe. Anyways. Yes, definitely in the BCEs. So Hathor was thought to have the power to protect you against illness and danger, just like Sekhmet. And she was important to Egyptian queens because they were often portrayed wearing headdresses just like her. Along with Isis, she was considered by the Greeks to be a version of Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty
That's
and
what
love.
it was.
You guys remember Horus from before?
Yes.
Why do those why did the person still have any arms just
I don't.
legs and feet?
That's because these guys are from the afterlife after mummification. These guys are the four sons of Horus and ancient Egyptian gods who were believed to protect against protect the organs of the deceased during mummification and the afterlife. We see Imseti, who protected the liver, Dwamutef, who protected the stomach, Hapi, who protected your lungs, and Quebeshnev, who protected your intestines. They're often depicted as different human figures with different heads. Insepti is the one with the human head and the beard. Dwamutef had the jackal head. Hapi has a baboon head, which is the one right there in the yellow. And Quebeshnev had a falcon head.
I have a question.
Hmm?
Do Egyptians still mummify people?
I don't know. I just am very educated in ancient Egyptians, but I don't believe that mummification is considered an ethical practice anymore.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you're lactose intolerant, just I forgot the name. The one in white, does he still do his job?
Dwamutef? Does he still protect your stomach if you're lactose intolerant?
Yes.
Well, it's kind of different because what he does is he protects your stomach in the afterlife, which means it's when you're dead. Yes. These guys were believed to have the power to help the dead navigate the afterlife and protect them from harm. And they're often worshipped during the mummification process. Over here we have Bes. And Bes is often shown as a short bearded man with a lion's mane and a tail, which you can't really see his tail here. He's also wearing feathers on a headdress. The ancient Egyptians considered those with dwarfism to be magical, and they were sometimes appointed a high status. So you know those people who grow up to be adults, but they can't get any taller than maybe 4 feet? So they're always this tall? In ancient Egypt, those guys were considered magical. He was thought to be friendly and helpful and protected children and cared and made people feel like they had a safe and happy home. He was a fierce protector, carrying knives and warding off demons and killing snakes. And he was linked with music, dance, and entertainment. He's worshipped throughout all of Egypt, and his image can be found in many homes. On the left, we see some people's favorite, who is Bastet, or Bast. She is the goddess of cats, fertility, and childbirth, and often associated with joy and dance. She's often shown with the head of a cat and the body of a human, and ancient Egyptians worshipped her because they all owned cats, and they're considered sacred animals in ancient Egypt. She's believed to have the power to protect against evil spirits and diseases, and her image is used as a symbol of good luck and protection. She's considered to be a gentle version of the lion goddess Sekhmet. Here we have Aten, who is a solar god, and he's also who we saw before as just a sun with the rays of sun everywhere. He is the giver of life, light, energy, and food, and often shown as a bright and powerful force. Here's the god Anubis, and he is the god of mummification and the afterlife. His head is the head of a jackal, and his body is human, but sometimes he's a full jackal. He works closely with with Osiris, and is responsible for preparing the deceased for the afterlife and guiding them through the underworld. He's associated with rituals of mourning and sometimes depicted as a protector of the dead. He's worshipped throughout Egypt, and his presence was felt the entire process of preparing a body for a burial. Despite this important role, Anubis is often seen as a gentle and caring god. Here is Amun and Amun-Ra. Amun was originally part of the Agduad. And if you remember that correctly, those are the Middle Kingdom creation gods. He's also known as the Hidden One because he was mysterious and a secret god. He's portrayed with a man with red or blue skin and wearing a headdress of 2 feathers. And he has a ram bearded man, which is the beard. By the Middle Kingdom, Amun became linked with the king and became a protector of the royal family. He married Mut and is the father of Khonsu, and he's also shown as the father of many pharaohs. In the New Kingdom, he was combined with the sun god Ra to combine and make the powerful god Amun-Ra, and he's worshipped throughout all of Egypt. He has a temple in Karnak, which is one of the most largest and impressive in the whole ancient world. And that is all. Thank you so much for listening.
You're welcome.